this little guy sparked an idea for us. And before we knew it, we had turned this idea into a full-blown visual identity and packaging design. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Today we're sharing our full brand identity and packaging process for a personal project called Collie Crunch. We're going to be creating the logo, visual identity, packaging design, and these fun custom illustrations, and talk you through each step of the way as we do it. This project is a real team effort because Jeremy's actually been playing around with all these different sketching and illustration techniques to improve his illustration skills. And he came up with these watercolor blobs that he then used an ink liner to create a little bit more character with. We had no idea what we were going to use these illustrations for. It was just a fun exercise. But as we were watching a kids show with our 4-year-old about vegetables, we thought about creating a vegan food brand with these cauliflower crisps. And Collie Crunch was born. Since these illustrations are really quirky and fun and playful, we wanted the rest of the brand to feel really modern and minimalist. A sort of laid-back feeling. One of the things that we immediately had in mind, because these characters have so much personality, was to also keep the color palette very minimal. So maybe have punchy colors, but then black and white, for example, for the rest of the typography and packaging design. So before we start sketching our logo, let's look at some mood board inspiration. One of our favorite places to look, especially when we're designing packaging, is the website Dieline. Like this report that they created about packaging trends for 2024. There's so much interesting stuff here, so I'll make sure to link it down in the description for you. There's one trend here that really applies to what we're trying to do, which is called New Wave Quirk. We have this very fun, playful, quirky illustration style that I love because it makes you feel something. And it feels really different to a lot of very corporate brands. And you also often see a statement font here. I think this is also really interesting if we could pair this with another trend in this report, where you have these really thick, bold statement fonts and lots of color. We also want to make sure that the packaging that we're designing is going to be sustainably made. And one of the easiest ways in this case, because our product is going to be quite dry, is paper packaging. For the printing, we can use vegetable dyes and we can make sure everything is compostable. Just as a quick note, the difference between biodegradable and compostable is that technically everything biodegrades at some point, while compostable products need certain conditions, like a specific temperature, for example, to break down. However, compostable products have been verified to break down into safe components that don't contain any harmful substances. Biodegradable is great if the packaging is made of very natural materials like paper without a shiny finish, and compostable is great if you have more complex packaging. There's a bit more detail, but just as a general reference. As we were brainstorming and thinking about different opportunities to make this packaging a little bit more personal, like having more of a connection from the company to the customer, we thought about having something that shows who packaged your product, for example, because this is going to be at a small scale to start with, and it's okay to do things that might not necessarily scale when they grow giant, just to really build that brand loyalty there. And one thing we thought about was you could have a little sticker that the person who's packaging can put on that they could either sign, or if that's a little bit too much work perhaps, we can get them to write their signature and we can have that printed on the sticker so that they could pick up one of their personalized stickers and put that on the packaging. So it says like packed by James, for example. There's a great company that you can look into if you want to do something like this. They have sustainably made packaging materials and merch, and so they're called No Issue, and they have stickers and other things that you can order at quite small quantities. It can be a good reference when you're working with clients to make as a suggestion. Not sponsored, I just really like them. So because this is a personal project and we don't have any copy or flavors from the client, our very first step is to come up with all that information ourselves, so we have everything before we start designing. For food products like this one, we usually expect the cover to have the logo, the flavor, you might have an illustration or a photo of the product. Usually you want to have the weight, and sometimes you also want to have benefits like it being vegan or gluten-free, for example. On the other sides of the packaging, you also want to include ingredients, nutritional information, and there might be regulations around what you need to highlight or include. So for example, a lot of countries have that you need to bold allergens, for example, so have it in a bolder font. So look into what is applicable for the country where this product is going to be sold. You can ask your client because they are the ones who have to comply, so a lot of the times they have that information already. But if you feel unsure, you can also call your local government if this is going to be sold in your local area, because they usually have a dedicated team who can give you information about this. In addition to these formal things we need to include, I also want to add a little bit about the company and mission, and something that can connect with the actual person who's picking up this packaging. So that might be little extra funny, quirky illustrations, or maybe including little personalized things like hidden things when you open the packaging, a little illustration, a little message, anything that can bring more personality and connection to your branding and packaging design. For the flavors, we landed on a masala one, a wasabi one, and a hot and spicy one. Now let's dig into the logo design. We want the design to be really simple and a little bit playful at the same time, so we're really trying to strike that right balance there. Having a bite taken out can feel like a very obvious choice, and so we usually try to stay away from those. But in this case, we had a specific reason to actually want to do it. We realized as we were sketching and coming up with different ideas that the separation between collie and crunch was quite unclear because it was written as one long word. We could stack it, but in this case we know that the packaging is going to need it to be horizontal for us to fit more information, like that illustration. So we wanted to have something that divided those two words, collie and crunch. And so in this case, creating that bite between them was a good solution. Here are some of the other ideas that we tried that we ended up not using, just so you can see our kind of creative process here. To make the bite feel a little bit more custom and playful, but also to make it a little bit more of a hint towards cauliflower and those little circles that they have, we also decided to round the edges of the bite a little. And as we were doing this, we also realized that rounding the edges of the letters in the word mark as well could make it feel a little bit more kind of organic and natural, which is a really good fit for that vegan and more natural foods brand. We also wanted to make sure we had an icon that's easy to use in smaller formats. After trying a few different things, we decided to go with a capital C and give it that bite as well. As you design, don't forget to zoom out and make sure your icon still works well at a small scale. For a bit more personality, we added a few crumbs as well. We decided to place them roughly where we'd made that bite cut, just to avoid the logo feeling unbalanced. For the brand fonts, the one we based the logo on is called Daddy Ranch, and we got it from Envato Elements. And to complement it and have a nice and easy to read and modern font for the text, we went with Clash Display. Keeping things simple, we went with different weights for the titles and body copy. It's time to get back to our character and start incorporating it into the packaging design. So at the beginning, we had the sketchbook with all these characters, and we needed to figure out which ones were going to be the best fit for the packaging and the branding, because not all of them have to be included, but also we had to transfer them to a digital format. We really want to make sure that we're keeping that organic watercolor feeling, and so we thought our best bet to actually preserve that was to create versions in Adobe Fresco on the iPad. Here we can use watercolor brushes, and then we can use a separate layer and a separate brush for that ink line drawing. The trickiest bit here by far was to make sure that we weren't trying to fix or polish areas that, we wanted to go over again as we were recreating it, because we wanted to look, clean and intentional, but at the same time it should have this like, oh, I just doodled this feeling, which is a really tricky balance. So we made lots of different variations on this and tried different line thicknesses for the inking, different levels of blottiness for the watercolor. And this is just like a fun creative process that we just sometimes need to go through. And then you can put them next to each other and see which ones actually work the best. Sometimes you even need to put them in context on the packaging to see which ones are going to work best. For the color palette for the brand, the flavors are really strong and punchy, so we wanted to make sure that the colors also felt very bright and vibrant. Obviously, when you're working with print and CMYK, there are some limitations because you don't have the same spectrum of color as you do for RGB and digital. If you're curious about color, I'm going to link a video that I made all about colors for branding that you can go check out. But we ended up doing these 3 colors. Now that we have all the different components, let's start putting together the packaging and the branding. One of the things we want to always consider when we're designing different products is how a customer is going to distinguish between the different flavors or the different SKUs on a shelf. And in this case, the packaging is going to be very minimalist with this black and white, so having the text in black and having the logo. And then the only real differentiation is going to be the name of the flavor, which is quite difficult to see at a distance, and obviously these illustrations that are the big focal points. But we wanted to bring in one more way to make a visual distinction between the different flavors. And we thought that a way to do it could be to have a part of the packaging that can be revealed as you open it more, but could be seen a little bit. We found this mock-up with paper boxes, which was perfect for what we were looking for, and it had this section that is at the bottom where you're revealing a little bit of color. So you can envision that as you lift it up, it has this full color of the box underneath. Now that we have our first product designed, I can replicate this process using the same layout but with the different illustrations and the different text for the other flavors. And finally, we can add the designs to the mockups to see it really come to life. This is great if you're presenting to clients because they might not be able to envision what it looks like just seen flat, so mockups are a must if you're presenting work to clients. I also want to say that if you're using pre-made mockups like this one, don't be afraid to start tweaking the settings for lighting, texture, anything else that you want to tweak to really make sure you're getting that brand aesthetic that you're after. If you mess up and you don't know how to go back, you can always re-download the file. To wrap things up, let's put everything together in a nice one-page brand kit. And there you have it. This was such a fun, quirky project to work on. And I just want to say that if you're excited about creating and you don't have a client like this one, or something that you really are passionate about working on, do it as a personal project. That's totally fine. It really develops your portfolio and your skills and your creativity. If you like walkthroughs like this one, we actually have one where we created a very similar project to this, a full brand identity, packaging, even photography, for a vegan food brand called Citrus. So you can check that one out next if you want. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck with your projects and see you next time.